everyone, and welcome to our 4th annual Hispanic Latino Heritage Month celebration special here at Pop Cult X. This year, we're diving into the eerie, the fascinating world of spooky folklore. Now, these supernatural tales have been passed down through generations, often serving as more than just a purpose to scare. They've been a way to preserve our cultural identity, teach moral lessons, and explain the unexplainable. In many Hispanic and Latino cultures, stories like La Llorona or El Cucuy aren't just ghost stories, they're cautionary tales, often told to keep children safe and guide them away from trouble. But beyond that, they also keep us connected to our roots, passing down the values, fears, and beliefs of our ancestors. These legends offer a way to explain the mysteries of life, like death, nature, and the supernatural, especially in times when science couldn't provide those answers. So today, everyone, thanks again for showing back up. We have Rob Alesea with us and Gen X. Thank you guys for jumping on this conversation with Gabe and I. We really appreciate that. So before we get into our topic of the day, I want to ask you guys, did you guys happen to catch any of the Emmys that happened this past weekend?
Yeah.
I completely missed it. I'm ashamed to say it, but Gen X, what about you? I'll have to catch up with you guys.
I was in the same boat, Rob. I was kind of in and out. I was busy.
Yeah.
It was a lot going on. You know, those Emmys come and they don't ping you. I mean, I thought I would get at least a phone call, an invitation of some sort. You know what I mean? But I did see my favorite show, The Bear. Killed it.
Mm-hmm.
Liza Colon-Zayas, she made history.
Yeah, Puerto Rock extraordinaire. She's amazing.
Yeah. But you know what? It's so funny that you say that, Gen X, because I feel like you bring up such a point that I talk about with friends, and that I just feel like in general, I feel like the marketing and promotion of things isn't what it once was. I feel like when there was a special on TV, it was hitting you every day, right? You get a commercial every day. Like everyone knew something was coming up. Sometimes they have these award shows, and I don't even know that they're on. I'm again, as someone who's in the industry, it's so bad that I'm saying that, but it's the God honest truth.
It's true. You're absolutely right. And I didn't catch it until the next day. So I didn't see it live. I watched it on Hulu. And one of the things that stood out to me besides the Liza that you mentioned was Gael Garcia Bernal and Diego Luna in their presentation. They were presenting an award. And I was watching it. And then all of a sudden, Diego Luna says something like, we're going to step this up. We're going to push the boundaries of this award show. And then he delivers the rest of his speech that he was giving all in Spanish.
Love it.
No translation, no subtitles. It was just all in Spanish. And I thought that was really cool. And I think it was really cool for me because I actually understood everything he was saying, which might not have been the case a few years ago, but it was really cool. And I really appreciate that he did that.
I mean, it's such a great moment, you know, just for us, because I mean, you know, as Latinos, Hispanics, we're so much of the majority of those that consume media, television, film all the time. And we don't have to always talk about, but I always say, like, guys, be cognizant in our industry that we're still such a small percentage of those working, which is why I always say we got to keep pushing. And I think like that kind of move is a push to be like, hey, like this type of content is important, right? And showing that love, I just think it was a really cool moment. It was, it's like, even when you talk about it now, I felt like that little goosebump feeling. It's cool, man.
Two of my favorite stars that were there representing was John Leguizamo and Selena Gomez. Yeah. Both of them are two of my favorites. Selena Gomez actually just got categorized or recognized as being a billionaire, which is incredible.
Wow.
For someone of her age, singer, actress. She was nominated for Murders in the Building, I think is what it's called. Yeah. With Steve Martin and Martin Short. John Leguizamo did a great job of sort of making fun of the political climate as he normally does, and really kind of making a call to the industry to have more representation when it comes to Latinos in the industry, which I think he always does such a great job of being politically conscious and aware and being very assertive in that instance, but also being very funny because I think that sort of opens the doors for people. It like makes you pay attention to what he's saying because he's delivering with such a hilarious dialogue.
Yeah, have you guys seen his one-man plays at all? Like, he's really on point.
So good.
He's so good.
So what an entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time, and the energy he has, it's just like from opening. I saw him at one of his one-man shows with my dad, and I never forgot it. It was, I don't know, it was forever ago. I was still a kid, but it made such an impact on me, because it's like, oh, I'm seeing someone that represents me up there, you know what I mean? And just killing it, and everyone's laughing and enjoying. And then to also see where he's taken his career, and like in moments like this, like you said, use that platform for positivity.
Yeah.
And what I love, what you were saying, Gabriel, too, about with the fact like using humor is a wonderful thing, because I think also too, it lets us put our defenses down, and say, hey, I'm letting you know, right? Just like great comics, right? They'll talk about things that are going on, but by making you laugh about it, maybe you don't feel so maybe like nervous to talk about it. Maybe like I said, you put your defenses down and, kind of open the door for that conversation. So, cheers to John Leguizamo.
Yeah, it makes me proud to think about, like you talked about, Rob, the market is huge in our sphere, right? And so when when we start talking about the American market and how we're starting to infiltrate certain areas, and even looking at like the colorism piece too, right? So that's the other thing, right? To think about Afro-Latinidad and really start to really, contemplate on the ethnicity part and how futuristic we are. Every time I look at those award shows, I'm like, we are good looking and smart and just talented. I mean, how could you look at us and be like, boo? But then again, I'm like, yeah, I can see why you're like, boo, because you want to, you want to hate on us. But anyway, I just wanted to say, I think that it's also a reminder that the American market isn't the only market. And when I see award shows, we talked about how we didn't hype up the award show. We didn't know about it. But when you look at the like overseas or even international shows that really highlight us, their productions, like they are massively attended, and they're huge. And the politicization of it is also part of just who we are, I think, as a people as well. And so I think that the multifaceted talent and also using our voice is definitely one of the things that I really love about our people.
Absolutely.
I agree. And yeah, so that, I mean, I think today as we're recording this, it's National Voter Registration Day, or get out the vote or something like that. So if you haven't out there registered to vote, go do so. Have your voice heard, and only by participating can you take a part, I guess, and participate. Yeah, not to be redundant, but go vote, register to vote. Make sure if you're not sure, go check to see if you are registered, and there's websites that allow you to do that. And so
Danny, you should make a Pop Cult X commercial on voter registration. And do it in Spanish. Say you're gonna mix it up.
Okay.
Good luck.
I can do that.
Telemundo, ahora mismo lo vamos.
No. You know what? I'm gonna take up your challenge. We'll see. I'll produce something for you, and I'll have you guys, send me a clip just saying "go votar" in Spanish or something. And I'll put it in there.
Heck yeah.
Voto Latino.
There you go. Well, let's get on to our topic of the day, because I'm not going to be able to smoothly segue into that based on what we just talked about. So we're just going to jump right into it. Now, I grew up, as you guys, well, I know Gabe knows, but I'm not sure if you, Jen or Rob know, I am both Mexican and Jewish, so I had a dual heritage, but grew up really not knowing either of them. So my folklore, my spooky folklore was Little Monsters with Howie Mandel. So that was like,
oh, dude,
that was like what I grew up with. So, bed monsters going underneath your bed and whatnot. That was my folklore. And so what I really want to know, and I'm going to be a little bit more of a fly on the wall and listen to your guys' stories. Hopefully you have some more engaging ones than that, about what kind of spooky folklore did you guys grow up with, that maybe stories that were told to you. I'm really curious. So Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and this is kind of wild, it was, I feel like the thing that ended up springboarding me into the horror genre as a filmmaker. So as a kid, I've suffered from sleep paralysis like most of my life.
Oh, wow.
Long time. And then I remember I had this kind of run where, I didn't have any experiences from, let's say, 27 until like 30. So I had like a good 3-year stretch of none. Then when my wife and I met, she was my girlfriend at the time. Um, we started talking about it, and it turns out she had also suffered from sleep paralysis. And I had never really met or at least maybe if I have, I'd forgotten, but it wasn't something I talked about too much with people. And then we started talking about our own experiences. And then that's when the subject of shadow figures came up. So, like, if you are someone who suffers from sleep paralysis, or you've known someone who suffered from sleep paralysis, I mean, you can go on YouTube, just literally type in sleep paralysis shadow or sleep paralysis hat man. And they say people that suffer from it will tend to see shadow figures in their room, right? So when you're in that like sleep paralysis state, oftentimes you can still open your eyes. So she and I have both had that forever. And I never knew before her that so many people did, either did she. And then we went on this like rabbit hole Google search and found out like literally thousands of people since maybe the beginning of recorded time have seen this shadow figure with a wide brimmed hat, very, very tall. And because she and I were writing partners, we said, hey, let's just write a story about this. Cause it's also like, we love horror as like people that go to see it. But it's also like a personal story. And how often can you say a horror movie is such a personal story? So we ended up writing that film and we produced it and I directed it. And who knows, maybe it excised the demon because I haven't had any sleep paralysis experiences. But I just will say, guys, I'll just speak for myself. I have definitely seen shadow figures in the room during sleep paralysis, and it is one of the most scariest, terrifying things you can ever go through because you literally cannot move your body, right? So people have equated to like if you died, right? Like if you were like, your body was dead, but your mind was awake, and you're like you have consciousness, but you can't move. It's I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's terrifying. So that was a big one from my life. Again, because I experienced it, was always one that I always wanted to learn more about, especially now, my adult years, like really finding out about it. But yeah, that's my story. Freaky as hell.
Yeah, I can actually share part of that with my dad experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
He claimed that for the longest time that he would wake up, he would not be paralyzed. He would actually be able to get up out of bed and run after the shadow figures, and they would run into the wall or run into the door and just kind of disappear. He'd wake up and go for a baseball bat to try to chase after them, like a badass, like he's gonna go after these things, and they would always disappear. And he for years was just terrified of going to sleep because he knew that he would see these things. Would have the house blessed. We were raised Catholic, so he would have the house blessed by priest. I'll go through that whole thing. One of my memories that I remember him being most affected by is we saw the movie Ghost, and I don't know if you remember.
I know exactly what you're going to talk about when those black shadow figures pulled that guy. Oh my God, it's still freaky to this day.
My dad like turned white. He like got real quiet, and when I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "That's what the shadow figures look like. Is exactly that, like shadows coming to life, moving, and then disappearing into shadow, into nothing." And every time I watch that movie, it reminds me of what he was. Eventually, he moved and he stopped experiencing them. But I mean, it was years that he was terrified, and it became like family folklore that we grew up and talked about these things that were like terrorizing my dad for the longest time. It was crazy.
That's not. Did anybody else in your family ever experience, or was he the only person?
My brother for a split time started seeing them and questioned my dad and was like, why am I starting to see these now? And thought that it had to do with things that he was doing in his life, like maybe he wasn't being the best person.
Yeah.
And then he sort of just left it alone and he never talked about it again. So I don't know if he just ignored it or if they went away, but he never brought it up ever again.
I've actually had sleep paralysis. So that
Have you?
Yeah, that was, I remember my mind waking up, my eyes, I don't know if I was in a dream state or what, but I could see, but I just couldn't move. And it was really, at first it was just freaky because I was like, I felt my heart start racing and why can't I move? But then, I guess I just went back to sleep. I didn't see any shadow figures or anything like that time, but It's happened a couple times. It's scary when you realize you can't move anything. But
yeah. Basically, Danny's saying he's way braver than us. So he
Yes.
just went back to
There you
bed.
go.
And they also said, we're not going to mess with this guy. So they bounced. But with us, they
there you
mess
go.
with. That's the gist.
It's because I didn't get raised in, growing up with those stories of the La Llorona or the boogeyman or El Cucuy or anything like that. So I had nothing to base it on. So it was just like,
Right.
maybe it was just like, okay, that happened. Okay, fine. Why? But in my brain, I always go to scientifically, why is it happening? Why am I? And I always try to rationalize things, and that's the way my brain works. But what about you, Gen X? Any folklore that you grew up with or anything like that you could share?
Lord, I have so many stories, and it's unfortunate. So I'm kind of scared to share because then y'all might look at me differently. So
no judgment. No
okay,
judgment.
good. We're in the friend.
This is a safe
Okay,
place,
good.
safe zone.
But before you say something, remember this is going out to YouTube, so that's up to you.
YouTube is a safe space.
Okay. Yeah. Next thing I know, I'll be canceled.
There you go.
So my family grew up. So I'm Puerto Rican, and so that whole triangle is a serious situation. With Puerto Rico being part of that triangle. So my family has like I would say each of them have different powers. So they actually get to see certain things. I have an aunt who can like, I can't believe, I hope she never sees this ever. She gets dreams of numbers and she plays the lotto and wins. But the unfortunate thing about it is that when she wins, she doesn't use her winnings for like the betterment of like other people. So stuff happens to her. Like that is
it's like that,
Yeah.
you know, it is. It's like that kind of almost like they say like a karmic loop, right? It's like it's almost like it keeps happening so that they're kind of giving her an opportunity to say, hey, you know, we'll give you some more little breadcrumbs, but you got to eventually do the right thing with it to then move to the next lesson. Yeah, man.
Yep. And my uncle's another one. His story is freaky as hell. He used to go out. He stopped drinking and he was just basically like a designated driver. And we used to live in El Campo, which is like the boonies of Puerto Rico. And so he used to go out with his friends and they had this big pickup truck and he drove past these two young ladies on the road. And so they basically wanted a lift to their house and whatnot. And they was down the street and whatnot.
That's how every horror movie starts.
Exactly. And so they, instead of like putting them in the cabin, they actually sat in the flatbed. And so they drove them. And when they hit they told them to hit the truck flatbed when they were at their destination. And when they went to turn around the other way, the girls were basically holding their heads in their hands and like freaked me out. So I don't stop for anybody. I don't talk to anybody at night. I don't do any of that stuff.
Unless someone is like, please help me. And like, you feel genuinely need some kind of help. You don't pick up anybody, man. You just cannot.
Yeah. So it's a lot of weird stuff in my family, from the clairvoyant to the seer to, I personally have seen ghosts. I've seen things happen around me. Unfortunately and fortunately, I've actually had stuff happen where everything was it's kind of like deja vu. Yeah. But I'm in like real time and everybody else is slowing down in front of me. And I think it's really freaky. So I've actually suppressed a lot of that stuff. So I used to ask my mom all the time, but like, hey, like what's up with our family? And she goes, oh yeah, we're definitely have some gifts. And I was like, Lord have mercy. So it's weird because Gabriel talked about like growing up Catholic. I grew up Catholic. And so there's like a juxtaposition, like you're not supposed to, believe in any of this stuff, but then the stuff happens to you and you're like, holy hell, like what am I supposed to do with this information? I'm not a warlock or a witch. I don't practice any of that stuff, but I'm like, yeah, I want to be an archangel at this point. Somebody sign me up.
So Jen, it sounds like your family is full of sensitives. Like they're just sensitive to just different energies. That's wild. And they say that can often really be the case too. Like it passes down, right? Like through generations and whatnot. So, I mean, yeah, dude, I believe that. I mean, if someone says they saw something, who can someone to say you didn't? And then also the fact she keeps winning these lottery numbers, tell her to send me some lottery numbers, please.
I don't want any juju that she has at all. She's been so unlucky. I mean, it's been crazy. She wins and then it's like, oh, well, there goes the money. But my brother can actually astral project, which is crazy.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can't do it, but he does it. He say he travels to like visit people and like, I go, you go to Puerto Rico? He goes, yes, I've been to Puerto Rico. Like, that's insane. But yeah, my family's kind of weird like that. We have a ton of stories. I have my own stories too, but that's for another show, I think.
That's for next week. Yeah, we're gonna get to dive into that a little bit more next week, especially more on the ghost story side. So I'm really excited for that. If you're able to make that, and you out there as well, if you're able to make that next week, we're gonna be diving into ghost stories. I'm really Oh, go ahead, Gabe.
Something that I was really curious about is because we're all Latino, that if we have any stories that are very similar or the same growing up, I know that we have like somewhat of a common background, but we come from different parts of the world in the country, right? You know, I was raised in Arizona. My roots are from Mexico, so a lot of the stories come from Sonora, Mexico. But there was one story I kind of wanted to share with you guys because I heard this growing up so much, and it's not as popular as like La Llorona or Chupacabra or something like that. But this one was passed down from my grandmother's generation, where she said that there were neighbor girls that lived next to her that would sneak out of their house every night to go party. That they were, you know, just like fast girls, and they would go out, party, drink, and sneak out from underneath their parents' rule of their house. And what they would go to a famous club in Tucson, Arizona, that is now shut down. It's just an old historic building, but that they would go there every night, every weekend, and party. But one particular weekend, one of the girls saw a really suave guy there that was dressed to the nines, you know, super cool looking, good, handsome guy, started dancing with them. They partied all night, drinking, dancing. And then towards the end of the night, everyone starts freaking out. You know, she's wondering what's going on. She looks down and he has chicken legs, which, saying it now, does not sound scary. It sounds kind of funny, right? Like a man with chicken legs. But growing up, like that was like this scariest thing, like thinking that this guy was half animal, and basically taught her the lesson of like, you shouldn't be going out and being, you know, a party, be a good girl. And you know, that's something I think that is very common in the Latino culture, is like these stories that are meant to teach you, you know, to be a good girl, be a good boy, listen to your parents, don't go out, you don't smoke, you don't drink. But this was one that my grandma swore, you know, was true. I grew up, I've taken pictures of the building and tried to like go into, but it's all chained up. It's I have actually it on my wall because it's actually a really beautiful building. But yeah, I grew up with that as sort of a cautionary tale. Did you guys have anything like that where your grandparents or your parents told you like, you better behave because such and such is going to happen?
Bro, let me tell you, that's every day of my life as a young kid. I was so scared to do anything, that just because like I knew somebody was watching, whether it was an ancestor or like a demon or something. My mom wouldn't even let me go down the street when the kids got the Ouija board. She was like, hell no, you're not bringing anything in my house that's going to open portals. So yeah, there are things that I was like completely, you know, just I had to denounce. And I think, interestingly enough, the fusion between like the cultural and the religious side, those two things really played on each other, especially like being a good boy. Make sure that you are honoring your parents. And at the same time, there's like this devil that's waiting for you, or some demon, right? Somewhere in the corner. And it's kind of interesting how we actually fuse these cultural phenomenons or these cultural lore together. It's really, you know, scary to think about. And even to this day, I'm like, shit, I'm not doing that. I'm not playing with a Ouija board. I'm not going. Nope. There's no way.
It's Parker Brothers.
Yeah.
But those Ouija boards, man, those things are like, I mean, they're just scary, right? Because it's almost like how much energy, right? Like you kind of put into it.
Yep.
And I mean, I haven't done one since I was like a kid. And I remember it was just like on the commercial, are you moving it? Are you moving it? I know you're moving it. But yeah, I mean, that's why I don't mess with them. I'm like, listen, I don't want to take any chances, man. It's like, you open up those doors and then something comes and starts chilling in your house. You're like, nah, I'm good.
So I think we should meet somewhere in a space and do some ghost hunting as a team. I would never do it by myself, but maybe we can chronicle this as a show and an episode.
Yeah, dude, I would be 100% down for that.
Yeah, I think in San Diego, one of the most famous haunted houses in the country, the Whaley House, is there. It's like one of the most active ones, and I've been in there, but I'll share those stories next week, next episode. Teasing again.
Yeah, I like it.
But Rob,
I'm not sleeping tonight.
You mentioned the Ouija board and the Ouija board commercials. Now, a lot of folklore leads into pop culture, and especially in days gone by, it was word of mouth. It was passed down from generation to generation. But now it's a little more prolific, especially when it comes to movies like the Curse of the La Llorona, which was a recent film, which actually was really good. I really enjoyed it, and it really opened my eyes a little more to what that story involved. Has there been any movies or films that you guys have said, yeah, they really captured the folklore, especially when it comes to Hispanic or Latino folklore, that have been really just eye-opening for you guys?
I mean, I think La Llorona was probably one of the best, but yeah, I mean, I want to hear what other ones you guys have found.
There's actually a series of animated shorts that HBO in Latin America ran, and they did they're probably like 3 minutes long, if that. I forgot the name of them, but you can YouTube them, and they're in Spanish, and one of them was La Llorona, and they're really, the animation is like top notch. They're super cool, but they really play into those cultural urban folklore, which a lot of it predates, like it's a mixture of like the Catholicism with like colonization, like indigenous history and folklore, but I'll have to find the name of them and share with you guys, because they're really cool. Yeah, did you find it?
Yeah, Phantasmagorias.
Yes.
I've heard of that. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Dang, I haven't heard that in a while.
Yeah. I have not. Yeah. So it ran, they said, for like 2 years. So, I mean, it had a nice run.
Yeah.
This is cool.
They're really cool. I definitely recommend our listeners to check them out. It's just a really quick introduction to some of like the most popular urban legends in the Latino community. And they're so well done. And the animation is really top notch.
Dope. I'm going to check it out.
You got me going down this rabbit hole now. Thanks.
In doing research for this episode, I did do a little rabbit hole digging about, Spanish or Hispanic Latino spooky folklore. And there's quite a few that I had never heard about. Some of them, which we know, which was El Chupacabra, which started in Puerto Rico, right? If I'm not mistaken. And it's been, I remember the big buzz of that in the late 90s, how big that folklore actually became. And this was even pre-social media, right? So to hear about it with, offline, I guess, so to speak, in real life, it just shows how far widespread these stories can get. But of course, El Cucuy, which, is the boogeyman. Did you guys ever have any boogeyman stories other than what you've shared already?
I think for me, probably it was like a lot of what Gen X said. It was really kind of like a little bit of that like Catholic fear your parents kind of put into you, like about behaving. So I think for me, who knows, maybe some of that sleep paralysis stuff too is like that. But that for me was always I was always scared of the dark as a kid, really. Like I was always one of those kids where, if that closet door was cracked, it was really hard for me to sleep. But then sometimes I was so scared to get up to close it, I end up like staying like in the bed scared, and like, I just always remember that. Yeah, I was always like really like nervous about like boogeyman or something in the closet. The one thing I will say, I'll give my parents props. They got me this bed that I guess the way to describe it is like, it didn't have legs, right? It was just like kind of like a wooden base. So like imagine like a square panel. So like there was nothing could go under the bed. It was always too like just flat on the ground. So nothing was going to be under the bed. So we always had that one covered.
Nice.
So props to them.
Yeah, y'all gonna think I'm geeky, but like when I was a kid, my mom, I don't know why she thought this was a good idea, but we went to go see Halloween, like the first one, and Michael Myers scared the crap out of me. So when I saw Dream Warriors with Nightmare on Elm Street, I said to myself, you know what? I think I'm equipped that I can actually turn into the antithesis. Yes, Dream Warrior.
VHS, baby.
Rob, let me tell you something. So my comic book mind said, you know what I'm going to do? If I find myself in that problematic situation, I'm going to turn into Wolverine and have 2 claws and be indestructible as well. So ever since then, as a kid, I was just like prepared. Did it ever happen that I fought Freddy Krueger or any other mythical creature? No. But in my mind, I was like, I'm going to be badass and I'm going to kill them if I need to. I'm prepared.
Heck yeah.
So to this day,
I can actually that geekiness by admitting to the same thing, like being scared at night. But what I would do is think, okay, you know what? It's cool that I'm scared because I've got all these superheroes who have my back. And then I would start listing off superheroes. Instead of counting sheep, I would start counting like, well, Superman's here, Hawkman's here, Green Lantern's here. And they're protecting me. They got my back. And then before you know it, I would fall asleep. But it was like my version of counting sheep I would just start going through all my favorite superheroes and saying like, you know, they got my back. They're here to protect me. And then before you know it, I'd fall asleep.
Nice.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Wish I would have had that in my dreams. I mean, for the longest time, I had a reoccurring nightmare of a werewolf attacking me, chasing me.
Oh, wow.
And it was like reoccurring. It happened multiple times until one time, I guess I just told myself, you know what? I'm going to fight this werewolf. And I stood up to it. I defeated it. And ever since then, never had it again. So,
well, now it's interesting about what you say about that, because then that might mean you were lucid dreaming, right? So for anyone who doesn't know what lucid dreaming is, that's when you actually can control
it.
What you do in the dream. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, you know, you kind of got to that point, right? Where like you kind of was like, I got to take control of this. And it kind of showed you that you were able to have that control in that dream state.
Yeah. I've lucid dreamed before. Yeah. Those are fun.
Yeah.
Flying around is quite fun. Yeah.
You mentioned, Danny, how these urban legends kind of get into pop culture. I can kind of mention a story and how this urban legend sort of became reality and then kind of got into mainstream pop culture in Tucson, Arizona. There's a large indigenous community within Arizona. There's a couple different tribes that live within the vicinity, and there was a new casino that was being opened. And when it had the grand opening, people went, and it was a big celebration. But the legend or the rumor was that the devil showed up because he was. Because gambling is evil and gambling is not is a bad vice. Of course, the devil shows up. It got so bad, this like rumor that the casino actually had to shut down.
Oh, wow.
And they had to get elders come and bless it. And it was in the actual news that they addressed it and said, yeah, the casino is actually shutting down. They're going to have elders come down, bless the casino, kind of get rid of any bad elements that may be there. And so I remember just being kind of young and being like, well, that's crazy. If it's just a rumor, why are they actually shutting the casino down? And it was funny how this rumor started becoming like modern day urban legend that got into the news and then got into popular culture, so much so that they had to actually address it.
Yeah. Wow.
Do you guys remember, and I was trying to find this while you were talking about that they were saying that these like big shadow figures took over like a mall. It was like all over TikTok, right? That these guys were on, they were like, I saw them. They were like 9 feet tall. And they were like, these, you remember that? And it was like a ton of like every cop in town was there.
Yeah. It was like Miami or something, right?
I think it was in Miami. And there was all these people that were like, yeah, we saw these like huge, tall shadow figures. And then some people were like, they tried to confiscate our phones. And it was like just this crazy crazy thing, man. But it was like one of those things too, where I guess I think they ended up shutting down the mall when it happened. But the big thing in that situation is, well, then why did the cops come? Right? Like if there wasn't something to be there, and again, that amount, I mean, it was like out of a movie, right? Like when you see like those helicopter view shots, it's like every car is pulling in. Dude, that was crazy.
Yeah,
that reminds me. Was it Record? Or what? Which one was that? That they had to shut down like this whole apartment complex.
Yeah, Wreck. I think. Yeah.
Is it Wreck? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Wreck. That thing. It sounds familiar. It sounds sort of like that in a sense. That's really freaky. That's also by a Latino director too, right?
Yeah,
believe so. Yeah.
Let's see who directed that. And guys, I think the long and short of it is, there's a lot of stuff out there that we cannot explain.
Yeah.
Yes, well, it was. It says two Latino directors on that one, so that was dope.
I think with science though,
about the Latino culture is that there is so much to kind of pull from, because we have such a rich folklore that we had colonization with our indigenous roots, that we had like a really rich history of folklore. And then you sort of introduce this Catholicism that has this whole other spin on spirituality and demons and angels and all of that stuff. So it makes for like a really unique blend of like culture that we can draw on. And I think that some of my favorite authors or like creators really draw on that mixture between like their indigenous roots and their post-colonial roots as well. And I think that's really interesting. That is very unique to the Latino culture.
Yeah, the Caribbean, especially the Caribbean, I'm going to tap into that area in the Central America. You think about the other cultural or I would say religious foundations that are also part of like that colonizing, Catholic, and also the rich indigenous. I think about like La Brujeria and like all the witches. A lot of that stuff does come into play in pop culture in particular. And I always think about like, wow, this is interesting. We don't actually capitalize on this a little bit more because we have so many stories to tell. And I, again, I could go on and on, but ultimately, I'm actually flabbergasted that we haven't had representation in that arena, especially horror, or maybe it's co-opted and maybe kind of creating a different sense. Like I think about voodoo. Voodoo is another like religious area that we've done, but it's typically from an Afro American, maybe probably like Baton Rouge or some of Louisiana.
Yeah,
but it's really a Haitian, Caribbean religion. Especially around that time. So it'd be interesting to see what other movies come out. Think about Serpent and the Rainbow and things like that. Like that to me is straight up from that lore, that folklore.
Well, I think of one of when you said that, Gen X, I started thinking about how popular Santa Muerte is within the Latino community, and how that's really born out of these indigenous beliefs mixing with the Catholicism, and we're still holding on to those belief systems that we had before, right? So thinking of death as being not a negative thing, but as something that you could celebrate, something that you could actually ask favors for, that is not something to be feared, but is like a mother figure to a lot of people. And I've grew up with, walking into different buildings in Arizona that have altars to Santa Muerte, and it being like just a normal thing. Like to a lot of people, it'd be like, oh my God, that's super scary. There's a skeletal figure in the corner there with all these offerings. And it's like, well, no, it's actually kind of normal for us, because we don't fear that sort of thing as much as, maybe we were taught, or other people are taught to fear it.
Yeah, because that's ancestral. Like for some people, thinking about idolizing the dead, or even that ritual is demonic in some way for some cultures, especially some Christian cultures, right? Like that is of the devil. Don't do that. When it's actually embedded in our cultural religion to give praise to those who've passed on, ancestral things. And so that's a great point, Gabe.
I wonder if films like I don't want to call them children films, but like Coco or Book of Life have helped,
Yeah.
push that narrative forward of it. It's not a demonic thing. It's more of a, like I said, ancestral. It's more of a celebratory thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, you guys all brought up such a valid point, though, that, there's so much of an opportunity to tell more of these stories, especially in the genre space.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's, I don't even know if you guys have ever heard of like La Lechuza, which was when like a woman, stands for witch owl. So it was about shape shifting witches.
Yeah.
And I remember my writing partner and I had pitched on this movie years ago. And it was one of the ones that we were so excited about because we're horror nerds. And then also too, like it's in our culture. And then the movie, they never did it. And it was so disappointing because it was like, man, this is such a cool opportunity. I'm not Mexican, but to also learn about more about the Mexican culture, which is where this comes from. I was like, oh man. And that's why, yeah, like when these movies come out, it's like, I hate to say it's like voting. It's like, you got to show up, you got to download them, you got to buy them, you got to show up to the theater because, Dan, I know we were talking right before we went live here about how it was at the Chicano Hollywood Festival. And a big thing that what people were saying was, it's like Latinos, we don't get the second chance, right? Like when one of our films does not kill it at the box office, it's like, well, sorry, we tried, right? We tested your market, and for whatever reason, maybe they didn't respond. So the big point at the panel and the conference, like we have to show up, we have to go buy the tickets, we got to subscribe to these things, because when people make them, they want to know that they're successful so they can continue to make them again. So yeah.
Rob, can you talk a little bit more about that festival that you were at this past weekend? I know you said we did talk a little bit about it, but I'm really curious as to what you gained from it, maybe even personally, and what it was all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure like a lot of you guys know, Danny and I work together at LIFE, which stands for Latinos in Film and Entertainment. And this year, Chicano Hollywood invited us to be a partner, which was so amazing and so generous. Like really, there are a couple of nonprofits that have taken us under their wing because we're so young. I mean, we're literally maybe just about 2 years old. Yeah. So they invite us to come, and it was just like, every Chicano filmmaker was there, people that are working in the mainstream, but people that are also creating amazing independent films, and just coming together for this conference for 2 days. Amazing panels, networking opportunities. I met so many amazing people that, what was so cool is I literally just vibed with, right? Like beyond the fact that we're Latino, Hispanic, Chicano, et cetera, the fact that we were just like, hey, we love stories. We love celebrating the culture. We want to come together, keep elevating, keep working together. And just the energy was so positive. And that's what I loved about it because, even I have found myself in this place where, man, as a, Puerto Rican director, I'm still less than 7% of those working. And, it can be easy to go down that rabbit hole, but to be in that space, and I try to remind myself this, it's like, try to find the positive spin, right? Because I think that frustration can motivate you to change, but you can't live in the frustration, right? Then it's like frustration's got to evolve into motivation. So yeah, it was phenomenal. People were so kind to us, welcoming of us, just having everyone come together. And my biggest takeaway personally and professionally is this, and I did not forget this quote. Johnny, who leads basically everything, it's, Chicano Hollywood is his baby. He said, we have to work not only to open the doors, but keep those doors open. Right. So it's not just about opening them, right? Because a lot of times what happens is, we'll open a door and then maybe we'll get a movie out that year, and then the door kind of closes. It kind of gets silent for a while until then maybe in a year and a half or 2 years, something else comes out. It's like, we have to stay consistent, right? And continue, like I said, show up, support one another, keep building together. So then we know that energy keeps those doors open. So it was awesome. I highly recommend anyone go. It's yearly, one time per year. And it's just a fun time, man. You meet amazing people. You guys probably know Cobra Kai. I know Daniel is one of my favorite shows. It was a whole Cobra Kai panel. Latino actors. Vanessa Rubio, Sholo. They had a Latino director and Latino cinematographer. And they were all there on this one panel. And it was just like, it was powerful, man. You know, it was a powerful, dope moment. So yeah, again, I highly recommend, guys, chicanohollywood.com, join their mailing list, follow them on social, support them. And if you can ever make it to the Elevate conference, like, go, we'll hang out, we'll have fun. 'Cause I will definitely be there next year again. It was wonderful. And yeah, just met some awesome people and can't wait to do it again.
Very cool. And don't forget, anyone out there, if you want to join, it's somoslife.org. You can go check out our database.
That's our plug.
There's our plug for life right there. Somos Life. Go check it out. Somoslife.org. Get on the database and check out all the creative Latinos, Hispanic that are out there working and trying to keep those doors open and open up new doors for people. So,
absolutely.
Very cool. So like I said, next week we'll be doing our more ghost stories since we are getting into spooky season. I know tonight's like a blood moon or something like that. So maybe it's a sign that we need to, transition into the fall. With
Gen X's face.
So I'm excited for that. So everyone, I hope you guys can tune back in. As we wrap up this episode, is there any last tidbits you guys want to share or anything you have for us? Any topic?
Go ahead, guys. I guess I'll say the same thing, guys. Keep showing up, support when you see a Latino person drawing or, writing a comic book, buy the issue. You know what I mean? Like, all these things matter, right? It's just like I said, it's always like when people say vote, like, you have to show up. Like, if you keep supporting the culture and they see that we're doing well, we'll continue to be able to create those things. And the last thing I'll say, because I tell everybody, if you're a storyteller, go out there and tell our stories. Do not wait to get the permission for it. Now I sound like the old man. I tell the young filmmakers today, I say, guys, your iPhone is a gajillion times better of what I shot my first short film 22 years ago. Yeah. And kids today, especially the younger generation, they are so freaking smart with technology. They can make a whole movie on an iPhone. I bet it would be awesome. And I bet they would know how to edit it as well. So tell those stories, guys. That's my last piece for the night.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, that's something. Go tell the stories. Don't wait. Yeah, I like that. Absolutely.
Rob, and I think that they're not. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say ditto, Rob. I think that, we have to take an active role in all parts of the production. If you are a writer, or if you're a director, if you're a producer, so on and so forth, investing in ourselves is probably the best thing to do. And now that we have a lot of open possibilities, crowdfunding, things of that nature, we don't have to rely on folks. And matter of fact, we can look at other directors who can show us the way and even connect. Like you said, you were just at this festival and probably connected with a slew of folks who can actually make anybody's dreams come true, as long as collectively we can think about it that way. We tend to look at it as individualistic ways in which we have to do it on our own, but that's not in our DNA. Our DNA is, hey, let's get the family together. Let's get everybody together. Yeah. We can do this and produce it. And who cares if it's not a big budget? What happens is that translates into possibilities for the future, right? It could translate into a mega deal because of that one movie that you did that was, 10, 15 years ago.
Amen to that.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what you guys both said, for people that are fanboys, that are geeks, that are out there supporting the culture, is like, speak with your dollars. And when you see something that is created by a Latino artist, buy it, support it, make sure that you tell your friends about it and support it, just like you do all the other aspects of pop culture. I don't know, you can't really see, I'm going to angle my computer here, but I have my whole row of books here. They're all by Latino authors. I seek them out, not only because I want to support the culture, but because they're putting out some really great work. And they're very creative, very passionate, and very artistic. So go out there and use your hard-earned money to support really great artists that are out there.
Show you this, guys, before we leave. We're going to leave on such a good energy moment. Look at this Blue Beetle. 3 Latino names right on the front cover, guys.
Yep, absolutely. There it
You
is.
know?
Very cool.
It's awesome, man. When you see that, you're like, hey, you know what? Change is happening. We just got to stay consistent.
Yeah.
So.
And I would also say like what we're doing here, right? We're cross-pollinating in so many ways to influence, hopefully, each of our respective areas in which people are following us on social media and whatnot. And so being able to drop, the website, being able to talk about specific support areas and systems, even to think about grant funding, money that's out there. Those are the things that I think add value to particularly, our areas of expertise. And the podcast is definitely become a great vehicle to fast track a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely. So Danny and Gabriel, it's cheers to you guys who have been doing this and keep doing it, and also leaving this great space, right? Because you're right. Everything is always about showing up. Show up to the podcast, show up to the film festival, show up to that film set to go help somebody, right? It's just the act of doing. That's the change, right? Like just by us having this conversation, you never know who watches it. Is that inspired? Be like, heck yeah, you know what? I'm going to go shoot that first film. I'm going to go write that first comic book, right? Just because we had a space to say, guys, we can do this. Come on. We got nothing stopping us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I want to thank the person who goes out there and makes the story or tells the story of La Tunda, which is another folklore that I read about in research for this episode, where she keeps her victims docile by either giving them shrimp or farting in their face. So I'll end with that, everyone.
I drop.
That's a blockbuster right there.
Oh my God.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Make sure you come back next week where we talk about real life goal stories. And I'm sure Gabe has a lot to share. I know I have a few. Whether or not I believe in ghosts, that will be debated next week. So thanks for liking, for subscribing, for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.
Peace.
Okay.